Shalom. Giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, RAWCHAA, QADASH. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. Prophecy watch. All right, as we go in the news, as you can see here, Trump executive order will force Americans to surrender biometric data or lose their bank accounts. All right. Trump executive order will force Americans to surrender biometric data or lose their bank accounts. All right. And remember, just about a week or a few weeks ago, Trump, summoned, all of the bank leaders together, and had a meeting, a private meeting, over a terrifying new threat to the global financial system. You see that? And pretty much that was this new program that could be used, all right, for someone to do evil. Hackers can get a hold of this technology and many other things. Now, okay, there's legislation on the books. Well, when you look it up, it doesn't exactly say you're going to have to surrender your biometric data. But we know this devil is very crafty, okay? And pretty much the banks are now saying that we need to know exactly, all right, who we're dealing with and who's banking with us. We need to know more about you, all right, leading you more into that MOTB system, okay? And this is all centered around peace and safety because in their eyes, there's illegal immigrants who have bank accounts, and we need to know if you're a U.S. citizen. Now, when you read it, all right, it says Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, or another psychopath, has confirmed that a Trump administration executive order requiring U.S. banks to verify citizenship for every customer, new and existing, is actively in process. Okay, and this is getting ready to be the in thing, even, for Google accounts, email, YouTube. You're going to have to basically give them more information about yourself. And eventually you're going to have to give them your biometrics. You're going to have to give them more and more and more until they have everyone integrated into this new digital Tower of Babel, where they can surveil, your movements, your thoughts, what you're about, and pretty much, refuse you access to services based upon your beliefs, who you are, all right, and your mindset concerning the government, who them, the small hats. Pretty soon they'll have access to all of that information with this digital Tower of Babel, okay, and they're going to take it a step further after Black Swan events and the need to, identify everybody under the skin. Right, we know is going to lead to the MOTB. All right, so it says the policy means millions of Americans will have no choice but to obtain and present a U.S. passport containing embedded biometric facial data or risk being locked out of the banking system entirely. Okay, and this is what they're gradually moving towards. It's not like everybody's going to have a U.S. passport. They have the real ID, but they're saying that's not going to be enough. It said Bessent made the remarks last week. All right. He urged banks must fully know your customer. So now the banks have to fully know the customer. All right. Everything about you, including legal immigration status. All right. So they're centering this around illegal immigrants, just like the need for ICE to be brought into particular neighborhoods, all right, was centered around illegal immigrants. So they're using the illegal immigrant play as a means to bring about more structure for the MOTB infrastructure, okay, and to basically surveil you on a whole nother level. Okay, so now banks need to know exactly who is banking with them. They need to know their customers. And they're hiding it behind the guise of knowing legal immigration. And we know what the scripture said, all right, in the book of 1 Thessalonians 5:3, it says, for when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. That's basically when he is about to fill his belly. And this is all centered around peace and safety. Okay, the need to, surveil you on a higher level is centered around peace and safety. Going back to the Patriot Act, which pretty much never went away, after what happened in 9/11. Okay, this gave your government, the means to spy on you, cart you off, if they deem you a domestic terror, right? And pretty much we're finding out who the true domestic, terror is, all right? Esau, Edom, and the heathen who are joined with them, okay? And they're being found out on a level that they weren't ready for. So they're moving fast with their agenda, all right? But being that they know people are onto them, they're bringing about a lot of these things, all right, underhandedly, as the scriptures say in the book of Isaiah, the 10th chapter, right? Which this now deals with Esau, Edom, the rulers of this world. Okay, Isaiah 10:1, woe to them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed. So they already have, the particular laws and bills written down. Okay, but there's particular things that they push in their media, okay, to, heighten people's, emotions, and they already have the solution, all right? And basically it's going to be centered around surveilling you on a whole nother level, all right? We don't know who's the enemy. We don't know who's with us. We don't know who's against us. There's too many people speaking against the small hats. Why should we allow you to bank with us if you're not with us, or, all right, if you're illegal? Okay, that's what they're hiding it under. So again, he urged banks must fully know your customer illegal immigration status and declare that undocumented immigrants don't have the right to be in the banking system. So you see what this is all centered around. Okay, they're throwing that play out there so that Americans can be down with it. Okay, you point the finger at illegal immigrants, or, which when you think of an illegal immigrant, you don't think of an Elamite. You think of the Northern Kingdom, right? You think of a Haitian, right? You think of pretty much the tribes, all right? Any way to point the finger at the tribes and make them, all right, the number one issue is what will get the American people, all right, especially these MAGers, all right, down with the program, right? Because it was them who basically was responsible for the middle class losing all of their money and benefits. It was the illegal immigrants, right? Anyway, it says report indicates that the order would accept passports as primary proof of citizenship, while real IDs and many other documents that Americans have traditionally used to verify their identity won't qualify. So that'll be interesting to see how that works. Let's play this. I don't know exactly what Scott Bessent collapsed the British pound in 92. All right. And that's ultimately what they're getting ready to do here. Okay. They're getting ready to collapse the dollar. It says the Japanese yen in 2013, the Iranian Rail in 2025 is the US dollar next. My deep dive investigation on Scott Bessent, all right, which I have him pulled up here. Okay. He's the United States Secretary of Treasury. Does that look like a man with moral integrity that you can trust? Let's hear what she says about him.
The man running our Department of Treasury right now should scare the shit out of every single American. I wasn't going to do a follow the money on Scott Bessent because my list is so long right now, but yesterday was tax day, and in honor of that, him and Carolyn Leavitt got up on a press conference and tried to gaslight Americans into saying that gas is cheaper now than when Trump took office, even though it's around $4.10 right now on average, and it was $3.08. It's $1 more. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a break. divert and do a follow the money. And when I put these pieces together, I was like, how? My jaw was on the floor. I was like, how is this man our Treasury Secretary, and how did he get through this Senate confirmation? Because they confirmed him like 68 to 29. It was like one of the better ones. But I'm pretty sure he's going to tank the American dollar, if not when he's in office, as soon as he's out. But I'm just guessing, so let's get into it. All right, Scott Bessent went to Yale. He graduated from Yale in 1984, I think. He was the president of Wolf's Head. It's one of the three.
And we all know Yale is tapped into that skull and bone secret society. All right. And this is how they all get into these positions of power. All right. They go through these, secret societies, do all these rituals. You already know. All right. The Canaanite priesthood that runs this world is rooted in this. Okay. And Yale, all right, these are the small guys on a basically they go through this to pretty much show that they have no integrity, they have no morals, they're down with Satan, they'll pervert judgment, they're not for the common good of the people, they're for the common good of the elites. And pretty much that's what has happened to your U.S. government. It's not working on behalf to benefit the people, it's working on behalf to benefit corporations and the NWO. See? Which paper money will not be an end thing in the NWO. They did it. They're doing away with the penny. They're getting ready to do away with the nickel. All right. And they're going to continue, all right, down this path. All right. And some, catastrophic event will hasten them, all right, doing away with paper money. That's why on the back of your dollar bill, you have Annuit Conceptives. All right, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is Latin, the language of the ancient Western Roman Empire, right? For, all right, announcing the birth, or the gods have granted us, okay, the go-ahead to establish a new secular age, a new world order. Okay, and that's purposely on the back of the dollar, because the new world ends. I mean, the new world ends, marks the end of paper money, so to speak.
3 major secret societies that are at Yale. He went when he graduated and did some Wall Street junior jobs before George Soros hired him to work for him. And he didn't just work for him. No, he went and ran the London office. And in 1992, 1 year after he started working for Soros, he was the guy who figured out how to break the Bank of England. So Bessent found the vulnerability in UK mortgages that identified that the British government was trapped. He had Soros bet on it, $1 billion. And in one day, the pound crashed. And Soros and Bessent and the George Soros' firm, well, they made billions. In 2013, he did it again, but this time with the Japanese yen, and crashed that, and over 3 months made Soros $1.3 billion. So our Treasury Secretary is just really good at identifying vulnerabilities in currency, betting against them, and then having that currency collapse. See where I'm going with this? Aren't we so lucky? Dollar's not in harm's way at all, is it? He's also the one that hinted at making Iran's currency crash right before we went in for the war and why everyone was protesting. He did allude to that, which caught my attention, but moving on, there's a lot more. He worked for Soros, left for a few years to start his own management company. It failed. He went back to Soros. And then a few years after that, he was like, okay, I'm going to try again. And Soros gave him $2 billion to start the fund that he had up until right before, we're going to get to this, he became Treasury Secretary. This fund ultimately lost money every single year, except 2024, when Trump got into office, because they made a bunch of bets about Trump getting into office. But they lost money every single year prior, took all the $2 billion that Soros gave them and lost it. They were down to like 500 million or something. Then 85% of their investors pulled out right before he became Treasury Secretary. So he isn't good. He loses money, and now he's in charge of our economy. Okay, it's all making sense now. But on top of that, in his fund, while it was losing so much money, he had categorized himself as a limited partner, even though he was CEO, founded it, ran it. He was a limited partner, then way he could evade $910,000 in Medicare taxes that he should have been paying. Then then it went to litigation, and currently it's still there. Currently, he is overseeing, as the Treasury Secretary, his own evasion of taxes case. Make it make sense. Okay, September 2025. Remember that Argentina bailout that we did? It was $40 billion, $20 billion of which we gave them, bailed them out, and $20 billion of which they have to pay back. Well, his friend, Citron, I forget his first name, he runs a hedge fund. They worked together at Soros, and they're friends. Well, Citron his firm purchased billions, hundreds of millions of dollars of Argentina bonds and equities right before the bailout. And then a few months later, we bail them out, and he makes tons of money. That's not insider trading, is it? Because Basent is the one who ran the bailout. There's a bunch of other shady stuff. I'm telling you, I can only...
Yeah, so corruption, at the end of the day, corruption, and that's getting ready to be overcome. Okay, this is the book of Micah, the 6th chapter, in the 10th verse. It says, I'll start at verse 10 in the NLT. It says, what shall I say about the homes of the wicked filled with the treasures gained by cheating? Okay. And when we see happening with the market manipulation with the Gulf of Hormuz situation, and what these elites are doing, and with these, the presidents, having their children, do all manner of wickedness and corruption, manipulating the market on purpose. All right. Same thing they do with the stock market. Right. Again, what shall I say about the homes of the wicked filled with the treasures gained by cheating? Okay. And the leaders of Israel were once involved in this. Okay. This now applies to you Edomites, the rulers of this world. What about the disgusting practice of measuring out grain with dishonest measures? And we know that goes on. Okay, and see what's getting ready to happen when the collapse comes, okay, and the food shortages really hit, okay, it's going to integrate everybody to them, okay, and things are going to be outlandish, lines are going to be long, all right, and pretty much to make it easier, you're going to have to be entered into a digital system. You're going to have to be identified biometrically. You're going to have a digital ID. You're going to have to eventually bow the knee to the image of Baal, right? In order to be able to, even before they bring the chip, they're going to have that kind of system in, that technocracy. It says, how can I tolerate your merchants who use dishonest scales and weights? Okay, in the King James, shall I count them pure with the wicked balances and with the bags of deceitful weights? Okay, it says, the rich among you, all right, the rich men thereof are full of violence, and the inhabitants thereof have spoken lies, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouth. Okay? Therefore, I will wound you. I will bring you to ruin for all your sins. And this is what's getting ready to happen to these Edomites. They're working wickedness all throughout the four corners of the earth, man. Okay? They're a bunch of, scammers, man. See, but they're able to use their media and their news, all right, to make everybody else out to be, number one in these areas, but they're number one. Okay. It says the biometric trap. Every U.S. passport since 2007 is a biometric e-passport. It contains a RFID chip that stores your personal data, all right, along with digital facial image specifically formatted for government facial recognition systems. Although applying only requires a standard photo, that photo becomes permanent biometric data held by the State Department. By tying bank accounts to passport verification, the executive order transforms this biometric passport into a de facto national ID, all right, requirement for financial survival. Tens of millions of Americans without a valid passport will now be forced to get one. See, and we'll see, how this goes. But these are the things in the works. Even if you go and look it up and they say, well, no, they're not technically, this is not what it is. We see that they're doing something. They're moving forward. And as the scriptures say, wisdom, all right, seeks out, I forget how it's worded. Witty inventions. Yep. Wisdom, Proverbs 8 and 12. Wisdom dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions, man. And we know that these devils, through their policies, right? The book of Daniel 8 and 25. Now, this is speaking of Antiochus Epiphanes, all right, the fourth, but this applies to the biblical Edomite, the book of Daniel 8 and 25. Now, this is speaking of Antiochus Epiphanes, all right, the fourth, but this applies to the biblical Edomite rule in the day, because the Greeks were the beginning of the very beast system we live in, okay? Daniel 8 and 25, and through his policy, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall he destroy many. See, by peace, he's going to destroy many. All right, needing to identify you and needing to bring you up under this digital ID banner. Eventually, MOTB infrastructure is going to be a means, all right, by peace to destroy many. Okay, it says, handing over, and now they will be forced to hand over their facial biometrics to the government. In the process, this is not voluntary, it is compulsory access to your most personal biological identifier, just to hold on to a checking or savings account. Okay, and then he goes into Scott Bessent, just like she did. He's no outsider to the elite financial power. He spent years at a Soros fund management, which we know Soros is absolutely Satan. All right, and pretty much he goes into the same stuff that they're going into. It says the real agenda, building the globalist digital control grid, the modern day Tower of Babel. Remember, this is Nimrod. All right, remember, America in prophecy is known as the land of Nimrod. Okay, and when you read this chapter, it's speaking of YAHAWASHI, his birth, and how he's going to come and deliver us. Okay, as a matter of fact, let's see here. It's basically talking about how YAHAWASHI's birth marks, eventually in the future, us being delivered back from exile into our homeland. Okay, let's see. When you go down, let's get to the point. Verse 6, it says, they will rule Assyria with drawn swords and enter the gates. Oh, I'm reading in King James. And they shall waste the land of Assyria with the sword. And this is what's coming to Babylon the Great. And the land of Nimrod and the entrances thereof. Thus shall he deliver us from the Assyrian. And who's the modern day Assyrian? Esau, Edom. Okay. When he cometh into our land, and when he treadeth within our borders, when the enemy comes in like a flood. And the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many people, as the dew from Yahawah, as the showers upon the grass, all right, that tarrieth not for man, nor waited for the sons of men. And the remnant of Jacob shall be among the Gentiles, in the midst of many people, as a lion among the beasts of the forest, and as a young lion, all right, among the flocks of the sheep. All right, and this is going into what? The day that the Lord is going to deliver us and slaughter our enemies. Okay. Verse 5. Verse 11. And I will cut off the cities of thy land and throw down all thy strongholds. And I will cut off witchcrafts out of thy hand, and thou shalt have no more soothsayers. Thy graven images will I cut off. Okay, and the MOTB is a graven image. And thy standing images out of the midst of thee, and thou shalt no more worship the work of thine hands. Okay, so the Lord is going to, in verse 15, I will execute vengeance and anger and fury upon the heathen, as such as they had never heard. So that's tied to the land of Nimrod. Okay, that's tied to the land of Nimrod, which we know Nimrod, right, means what? Rebellion. Namrod, rebellion. Okay? He established Babel, which means confusion. Now we're in Babylon the Great. You see how it all ties in together? He founded Babel, right? And now, in end time prophecy, we're as prophecy stated, okay, the real agenda is building a globalist digital control grid. This is not merely an immigration enforcement tool. See, that's what they're hiding it behind. Okay? It's a critical step in long-planned construction of a national and ultimately global biometric surveillance system. By requiring biometric passports for banking access, the government is creating the infrastructure to link every citizen's face, identity, and financial life into the centralized digital program or profile. Okay? And eventually you won't be able to log into Google or anything without your biometrics. They put it out there. They give you the option. Okay, and you may skip it, right? You skip it and just log in with a password. But as this guy, Larry Ellison, said, passwords are getting ready to be a thing of the past. He's another, one of the guys that's down with Trump. All right, a technocrat pushing this agenda. It matches exactly what independent researchers and whistleblowers have warned about for decades. A cashless society where your biometric data becomes the key of every transaction. Once your face is digitized and tied to your bank account, it becomes trivial to track, freeze, or deny access to funds based on compliance, social credit scores, or political behavior. The know your customer excuse is cover for building the mark of the beast style that eliminates financial privacy forever. The Soros connection makes the picture even clearer. For years, Soros and his network have funded open border policies, global governance initiatives, and digital ID projects worldwide, placing one of his most trusted proteges inside of the Trump administration to push this biometric banking mandate is not a coincidence. It is the quiet continuation of the globalist agenda, now dressed up in America First rhetoric. And if you ain't known, if you don't know by now, the whole America First thing was a scheme, a scam. Okay? Whether under Trump or any other administration, the end goal remains the same. Total control through biometric identification linked to your money. See that? And it says the executive order is still in draft. Okay, but the direction is unmistakable. And this is what John the Revelator saw. Point blank period. Revelation 13, right? And 16, and he calls it, the beast, all right, the revival of Rome, Esau, calls it both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hands or in their forehead, all right, and that no man could buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. See? And when you look up this word receive, didomi, to give one to something for his advantage. This is going to give you an advantage in the world to come. To supply, furnish necessary things, to give over to one's care, something to be administered, all right, to give or commit to someone something to be religiously observed, to give what is due, wages, to pay wages or reward. See that? So for some reason, everything we're seeing right before our very eyes has nothing to do with what our forefather John the Revelator saw in a vision, all right, thousands of years ago, right? Of course it does. All right, of course it does. Because everything that we're living through and everything that we're witnessing through the Holy Spirit is something that they already saw. And that's the power of prophecy, man. So, Lord willing, we'll be back with more. Hopefully I'll edify on to the next. Shalom.